welcome to the Bellevue City Council meeting for September 23rd, 2025. Before we begin, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate that you're here, and we've heard a lot from the community. I'm sure we will hear more tonight at public comment. I just hope that we can all be polite, not use obscene language and no insults to people. We can convey our feelings appropriately and intelligently, and I look forward to hearing from you. And so with that, City Clerk, could you do the roll call?
Mayor Robinson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Malakoutsian? Councilmember Bargava?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Neuenhouse?
Here.
Councilmember Sumadoria?
Deputy Mayor, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
Absolutely. Please rise. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have three proclamations tonight. We have the Domestic Violence Action Month proclamation. We have the Filipino American History Month proclamation and the Disability Employment Awareness Month proclamation. We'll read them all three and then we'll come back and do pictures. We're going to start with Domestic Violence Action Month, read by Councilmember Hamilton and received by Mark Tarantino, our patrol major for the City of Bellevue Police. Go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you. Whereas domestic violence is a serious crime impacting individuals of all socioeconomic backgrounds, races, genders, faiths, orientations, and abilities, and whereas domestic violence is widespread and has a devastating impact on survivors, children, families, and our community, and whereas from 1997 to 2024, 399 domestic violence incidents in King County have resulted in fatalities, including 305 homicide cases, 70 suicides, and 24 cases involving law enforcement intervention. And whereas the Bellevue Police Department responds to an average of 1,200 domestic violence cases each year, with more than 700 incidents already reported in 2025. And whereas historically marginalized populations, including LGBTQ+ individuals, people with disabilities, immigrants and refugees, people of color, and indigenous people, experience some of the highest rates of domestic and sexual violence, along with additional systemic barriers to safety and support. And whereas education, prevention, and intervention efforts to end the cycle of domestic violence are essential not only to protect survivors, but also to raise public awareness of its severity, prevalence, and far-reaching impacts. Now, therefore, I, Dave Hamilton, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of its City Council, do hereby proclaim October 2025 as Domestic Violence Action Month in Bellevue, Washington, and urge all residents to speak out against domestic violence and support local efforts to prevent and end abuse in our communities. LifeWire, a Bellevue-based nonprofit, provides housing, legal advocacy, and counseling to survivors. Survivors, loved ones, and community members are encouraged to call the LifeWire helpline at 425-746-1940 or visit lifewire.org for resources and support.
Major Tarantino, thank you.
Thank you for having me. On behalf of the police department, I want to extend my thanks and appreciation to the Bellevue City Council in recognizing this important topic. As this department mentioned last week, domestic violence calls have increased when compared to last year. In the spirit of addressing this serious issue, I want you to know that we have just hired a very experienced DV advocate, which will allow us to address this ongoing trend. The Bellevue Police Department asks all community members to call 911 should they be the victim or know someone who may be the victim of domestic violence. This is the first step in stopping the cycle of violence associated with domestic violence, which I know will lead to a stronger Bellevue. Again, thank you. The Bellevue Police Department is grateful for the ongoing and constant support from the Bellevue City Council. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a seat and we'll do a picture after. Okay, next up we have Filipino American History Month, read by Councilmember Bargava.
Thanks, Mayor. Whereas Filipinos have lived in the United States for more than 425 years, beginning with the earliest documented proof of Filipino presence in the continental United States on October 18th, 1587, in Morro Bay, California, the Philippines became an American territory in 1898 following the Spanish-American War. And whereas the first known Filipino in the Seattle area worked at the Port Blakely Lumber Mill on Bainbridge Island in Washington Territory around 1883. And whereas Washington State is home to the third largest Filipino population in the United States, and Filipino Americans are the largest Asian Pacific American population in the state, with the vast majority calling King County home, and whereas in November 1903, the United States government passed the Pensionado Act, providing funds for Filipino students to study in America. By 1912, more than 200 Filipino students had graduated from American colleges and universities, the University of Washington enrolling the highest number of Filipinos of any institution in the nation. And whereas Filipino Americans have lived and worked in Bellevue for decades, contributing to our city's growth, vibrancy, and economy. And whereas Filipino American History Month provides an opportunity to promote the study of Filipino American history and culture and recognizes the contributions made by Filipino Americans. And whereas today, as leaders, business owners, educators, and workers across all industries, Filipino Americans continue to enhance Bellevue's community and culture. Now, therefore, I, Vishal Bhargava, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, the Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October 2025 as Filipino American History Month in Bellevue, Washington, and urge all community members to celebrate the history and contributions of Filipino Americans to our community.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, next up we have Disability Employment Awareness Month, read by Councilmember Lee, and that will be accepted if you'd like to come up, by Karen Williams, Debbie Myers, and Savannah Roth Oak.
Whereas more than 1 in 4 U.S. adults, for 61 million Americans, have some type of disability, according to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. And whereas October 2025 marks the 80th anniversary of National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And whereas the purpose of National Disability Employment Awareness Month is to educate the public about disability employment issues and to celebrate the many and varied contributions, talents, and values of America's workers with disabilities. And whereas people with disabilities continue to experience disproportionate instances of unemployment, discrimination, poverty, and economic instability. And whereas workplaces that welcome the talents of all people, including people with disabilities, are a critical part of successful building inclusive communities and strong economics. And whereas the City of Bellevue embraces the diversity, culture, and contributions of residents with disabilities in our schools, government, workforce, and communities by consistently and diligently working to make city employment programs, services, and facilities accessible to all. And whereas numerous organizations and city staff in Bellevue work with residents and community partners to develop programs and policies that advance equity in hiring for people with disabilities. Now, therefore, I, Conrad Lee, on behalf of Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of City Council, do hereby proclaim October 2025 as Disability Employment Awareness Month in Bellevue, Washington, and urge all residents to support disability equity by recognizing the value and contribution of the people with disabilities in our workplaces and by pledging to take steps throughout the year to recruit, hire, retain, develop, and advance individuals with disabilities to foster full participation and economic self-sufficiency. Signed, Lynn Robinson, Mayor, City of Bellevue.
Welcome.
Robinson, council members, and staff, it's an honor to accept this proclamation celebrating value and talent for National Disability Employment Awareness Month. I'm Debbie Myers, the Executive Director of SCAC Employment Services, here with Savannah Roth Oak. And she's a recent new hire, is that all together, at the Highland Center. Our board president, Rita Schwarting, and support team, Erica Gilson, Andrea Beneto, and Karen Williams. This year's theme for the 80th anniversary of NDEAM is celebrating value and talent. And we at SCAC would like to celebrate the city of Bellevue for your commitment to supported employment, setting the example for all businesses to provide access and see the value and talent people with disabilities bring to the workforce. Your proclamation brings awareness and increases interest in hiring people with disabilities for all employers. I'd like to recognize the supported employees not able to attend this evening. Joe, who works both IT and finance, scrubbing computers in IT and updating business addresses for finance. Joe also is a member of the Disabilities Advocacy Resource Team, DART, meeting monthly to discuss ways to expand on more inclusive work environments at the city. Jesse, who works in HR, completing filing and scanning projects. Joseph, who works in the transportation department on special projects and maintains the cleanliness of the kitchens and conference rooms. And Savannah, who is here tonight, who keeps the Highland Center ready for patrons to enjoy. Savannah, would you like to say what you like best about your job?
I like to do art.
So you help set up the art,
Yes, the art.
yeah? And do you use a checklist to get all your tasks done?
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about your job? Yeah, you like it though. Yeah. Savannah also has, we'd like to present a 2025 Employer Award to the City of Bellevue for your inclusive hiring practices and recognizing value and talent through supported employment.
Oh,
Thanks
lovely.
for having us and thank you.
Thank you so much. Would you, can we do a picture?
Pictures.
All right. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, City Clerk, do we have anyone signed up for oral communications?
This evening, there are 17 pre-registered speakers, though I will say that a number of those folks are signed up in support of the same item, which is 10B. So we will only be able to hear from the first 3 speakers. So I'll go over a few of the rules that the council has in place. So total time for oral communications is for a period of no more than 30 minutes, and all topics have to relate to City of Bellevue government. People speaking to items on tonight's agenda will be called first, and then if time remains, people speaking to items not on tonight's agenda will be called. In both of those categories, the presiding officer is authorized to give preference to those who have not spoken to council within the last 60 days, or who will be speaking on items that will come in front of the council within the next 60 days. Each speaker is allowed to speak up to 3 minutes, and as I previously mentioned, only 3 speakers are allowed to speak to any one side of a particular topic. And then finally, I want to mention that in compliance with Washington state campaign laws regarding the use of public facilities during elections, no speaker may support or oppose a campaign, which includes one's own campaign, or a ballot measure on the upcoming election. Any speaker who begins discussing topics of this nature will be asked to stop. So with that, I'll call our first speaker, who is Jody Albers. Yep. Thank you.
If it's okay, I'd like to defer my time to Crystal Leatherman from the Washington Resale Association.
Sure.
Thank you.
So this is Crystal Leatherman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. My name is Crystal Leatherman. On behalf of the Washington Retail Association, I'm the Director of Policy and Government Affairs. We are here to voice our strong support for the proposed ordinance establishing mandatory minimum sentences for repeat offenders
Can you
engaged in
back up just a little bit from the microphone? There you go. Sorry.
in public disorder, for repeat offenders engaged in public disorder crimes. Retailers across Bellevue are facing an alarming rise in retail theft, organized retail crime, and related offenses that undermine public safety. Let me be clear, these are not victimless crimes. Every incident puts employees, customers, and the community members at risk. Our retail members and other businesses are not only bearing the financial costs, but also the emotional toll of working in an environment where safety feels increasingly fragile. This ordinance is a balanced and responsible step forward. It focuses narrowly on chronic repeat offenders, the small group causing the greatest disruption, and ensures accountability through a clear 30-day minimum sentence. At the same time, it maintains pathways to rehabilitation through diversion and community court programs. Adopting this ordinance will protect workers, restore a sense of security for customers, and safeguard the economic vitality that makes this city a regional destination. It will also send a very clear message that in Bellevue, crime has consequences. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Carl Kleinick.
Mayor Robinson and council members, as the security director of the Bellevue Collection and an alum of the Bellevue Police Department for 30 years, I appear in front of you in support of Councilmember Neuenhouse's proposed ordinance on a 30-day jail term for repeat theft offenders. According to Chief Shirley's update last week, the Prevention, Intervention, and Enforcement Crimes Strategy has resulted in a notable decline in theft citywide. This mandatory sentencing ordinance supports this strategy and offers a strong incentive for active repeat offenders to choose a lawful, healthier path in life. Offender accountability is an effective tool used by the police department and the city attorney's office to combat crime, and we applaud the great support that we get from the police in their rapid response to our calls and the prosecutor in quickly filing of charges. At the Bellevue Collection, I see firsthand the harm that theft causes our guests, employees, and businesses. We routinely deal with repeat offenders, be they local, regional, or even international crime rings. To counter this, we invest heavily in training and tenant outreach to encourage everyone to report crimes, exercise best practices in submitting evidence and statements to the police, and maintain awareness through our security patrol officers. We collaborate directly with the police to identify active offenders and also host bi-monthly meetings for the Washington Organized Retail Crime Association to strengthen interagency coordination and offender accountability. Repeat offenders, however, require a different response because of their blatant disregard of the law. JN is one such offender that committed multiple trespass offenses and thefts over the past 3 years. There's a picture that the city clerk will pass out that I'm referring to. During one such incident, he knowingly violated an active trespass order, entered one of our buildings, stole 6 of our courtesy umbrellas, and this was after committing the same offense a few weeks earlier. Security dispatchers tracked the suspect toward the area of the QFC. I caught up to him, saw him shoplift at the QFC, and when he exited the QFC, I identified myself with badge as a security officer with the mall and asked for our stolen umbrellas back. He immediately went to weapons, pulled out of his pocket an expandable baton, held it in a menacing way, and refused to give us back our stolen property. I backed off, updated my dispatchers via my radio, and about 5 minutes later, the Bellevue Police Department was vectored in and he was taken into custody. JN is a convicted felon with 16 prior arrests, 4 of them being felonies, dating back to 1999. Due to his felony conviction being for the violent crime of arson, he would be ineligible for the newly created community court program that is housed at the Bellevue Library. Under this proposed ordinance, JN would be forced to choose between 30 days in jail or completion of a therapeutic program. The choice for him would be reasonable, measured, and appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker on the list is Lori Wilk.
I want to ensure, am I close enough to the speaker?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. And I'm speaking more from a member of the community and neighborhoods. I'm from the Rockwood community, and yesterday I sent a supporting mail for this, this new proposal. And as background, I also think it's kind of important to share from a neighbor perspective as opposed to a business perspective that I moved here when it was the Bellevue of the 70s, but that doesn't mean that I want it to be same old, same old. And I really love the vibrant business community that Bellevue has built. And so the speakers that have just spoken about all of the issues impacting their business is something that's really of concern to me. And it's the main reason I wanted to speak this evening. I also wanted to indicate that I too found the crime report encouraging. We've had in the neighborhoods, there's been a number of thefts in our small neighborhood. We've been car prowled frequently, so it's all a part of it. And it demonstrated, though, I think when we heard the crime report, that the Bellevue police are really being efficient with their funds, they're effective, and so those things are down. So where crime for thefts and car prowls is up, I think there would be a couple of things that we could do, and I think that, as others have indicated, the repeat offenders really need to be addressed. And we happen to have had an incident that I think for us really brings it home. It happened Sunday night. I came home, Gary had been working in the garage, and a car squealed into our small cul-de-sac, ran over people's lawns, rammed into a parked car in the driveway with a woman in it. They're just brand new neighbors, squealed out. Oh, and he laughed after he did that. Gary called 911. We had the police, immediate response. And when the officer came back to just make sure Gary had the description the same as he'd called it in and so forth, we were able to ask, so is this guy, did you find him? Oh, yes, we did. We arrested him. And I'm like, so are you all familiar with him? And of course, the answer was yes. And I just really feel like, I don't like to use cliches, but Seattle is a demonstration of judges only being able to use social measures. And I really think that the community court that's been set up is a step in a great direction. And I just think that we need to offer judges alternates. And I believe this measure will do that. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was the third and final speaker that we'll be able to hear from on 10B in support.
So just so the council knows, there's 8 other people who had signed up in support of that as well.
Yeah, and I would encourage, if you have not done so already, to email your comments to the council at council@bellevuelaw.gov. Our next speaker on the list is Pam Johnston. Ms. Johnston is joining us virtually. Ms. Johnston, can you hear me? Ms.
Okay,
Jones?
can you hear me?
Yep, we can. Your time begins now.
Okay. Um, I wanted to talk about the item concerning the public benefit rating system. This is a repeat um, re- request. We had the same request happen a few years ago. And I want to tell you a little bit about us, for especially the new people, what this program is about. This program is about making sure that we can have open space is one of the categories. Forest land is another category, but it's meant for things like, in one county, they're like putting all the land beside the river as open space. And one of the things that this is to try to get that open space that we need. The public ratings benefit system offers an incentive to preserve open space on private property in King County by providing a tax reduction. But it says on here, the area used for your home, landscaping, driveway, and other personal uses does not qualify. This whole thing of saying I'm going to take my backyard and make it open space is not in the meaning of the program, because it's meant to get open space and be able to add on to that. And there's only 2 things in Bellevue that have qualified, but they were qualified when they were in King County. So the system may have been different there. And this program lasts for 10 years. And you can, as long as you're in it for 10 years, you get to keep all the savings. But if you quit in 10 years, you have to pay all the savings back. So this person is trying to sell their backyard for open space. And, it's very likely that it would change hands in the next 10 years because houses do. And it really doesn't go to the meaning of the public rates benefit system, because even though there's a trail there, the trail is owned by the HOA. It's not a public trail. So anyway, I want you to look at this in depth because you need to know what the system is about. And it's really about trying to preserve open space in big blotches, not just tiny spaces that aren't wetlands or special pieces like that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Martin Seelig.
I'm Martin A. Seelig. I'm pleased to report that your professional staff, particularly Matthew Menard, Senior Planner, Development Services, and our family's experienced team are making solid progress. We have utility easements on our site that benefit our site. So do all the other sites in Bellevue. The difference is, in the easement, the Utilities Department requests that is going to benefit other properties, not our family's properties. And Deputy Mayor Moe, I know you've referred in the past to small businesses. Our family has a small business. We have one site on the whole planet, City of Bellevue and any place else in the world. We're a small business. I still request that you exclude from tonight's consent agenda the sewer easement S16 project. If you're unable or unwilling to honor that request, I ask that you direct your staff to continue to work with our family's professional team with a minimum of time and some well thought out creative planning. The city's professionals in the Community Development Department and the Utilities Department working together with our professional team, will achieve a win-win situation. The result will be that we will achieve that situation, that win-win, long before the city might be able to acquire the sewer easement by condemnation. Our goal is to achieve the same amount of floor area, and you'd know this, Deputy Mayor, as we'd have under the housing, the HOMA, Housing Opportunities, multiple areas, the same amount of floor area as if the easement did not exist. I appreciate the sacrifices the council makes. Last week when I spoke, I proposed a faith-based council. Tonight is the first night, or the second night, of the Jewish New Year. I recognize there are plenty of minorities on the council, but with a faith-based council, I don't think you'd have the insensitivity of having a meeting the same as if it were Christmas Eve or Christmas Eve Day. Thank you.
The next speaker on the list is Maria Hudson.
Mr. Zimmerman, that's a warning to you to not interrupt during public comment.
Hi, my name is Maria Hudson. I submitted some documents to your council today. One is dated a formal complaint against Officer Halstead. On Saturday, Officer Halstead continued a pattern and practice of the Bellevue Police Department. My vulnerable adult was commercially sexually exploited and given alcohol. And instead of ITAing her for trauma treatment and to do any kind of assessment of the perpetrator, they arrested her. They took her to jail for felony harassment of me and disregarded an 18-year-old developmentally delayed commercial vulnerable exploitation and intoxication. So I want this city council to talk to its police department specifically about vulnerable adults. They are showing up to me knowing that my daughter is commercially sexually exploited since she was a child out of Odo Middle School. You'll see that recently I did a subpoena duce tecum to Judge Tanalin for the for the forensic interview and for the video out of LifeWire Domestic Violence Shelter, just FYI. I want to additionally bring your attention to the order that was signed by Judge Tanalin on July 27, 2022, which identifies Bellevue Police Department as a conflict of interest. That has continued both before and after. Originally, we dealt with student-on-student child abuse that Interim Chief Montgomery oversaw, then Mylette, now Chief Shirley. There is a pattern and practice of your police department allowing third-party abusers of my daughter, and when they show up and we are trying to report it, they criminalize her, and they have also attempted to criminalize me. So the last thing I want to point your attention to is the mortgage assistance pre-approval letter. The wrong actions of your police department against my vulnerable adult for felony harassment of her mother instead of ITAing her jeopardized her homeownership with me for a 3-bedroom home. I will be addressing this matter with Judge Tanalin, if you do not, with a protective injunction, because this is just ridiculous at this point. Bellevue Police Department is aware that she is easily lured, vulnerable. They have obstructed Amber Alerts. They have had opportunity to arrest perps who have given her drugs, sexually assaulted her, given her alcohol, and no perpetrator has been arrested, but they're always willing to prosecute my daughter for the resulting injuries from the perpetrators and never willing to protect her. So I'm going to need you guys to talk with your police department about that, and I will be back before Judge Tanalin with a request for injunction on the matter.
Our next speaker on the list is Joe Kunzler, and I don't see Mr. Kunzler online. If you are joining us, can you please raise your hand? Okay, I'll move to our next speaker, who's Liz McKinney.
Hi there. My name's Elizabeth McKinney. I work at Lavish Roots Catering and Hospitality. I'm a dining worker there. I'm here representing my coworkers. We run the dining cafeterias at Meta Cafes in Bellevue, Redmond, and Seattle. I am here because our job has been very difficult. We had layoffs last February. Nearly 100 workers were laid off from the job. And the workload has just increased since then. Like, we are being asked to do a lot, and we're being denied our raises. And we have come together with the decision to unionize, to form a union. We went forward to the company in July with signatures from over 60% of our coworkers, asking the company to remain neutral in that decision and to respect the rights of their workers. And I want to thank Mayor Lynn Robinson for joining in our letter. We had over 40 elected officials from Washington State who have also called on the company to remain neutral as we go forward with our decision. But right now,
Just to be clear, I signed as an individual.
yes, thank you so much for doing that. Right now, that is not being respected. We are facing a very intense anti-union campaign on the job. We are being pulled into meetings, being told to vote no for the union. We have been singled out by managers, being told that we are soliciting and harassing our coworkers for having conversations. We have been kicked out of buildings for giving out flyers in the parking garage in non-working areas. These are things that we have the legal right to do, and that right is being suppressed right now. So right now I'm here to ask you today, we're on Thursday at 3 p.m., 3 to 4:30, we are going to have a picket action with me and with my coworkers right in front of the building that I work, which is in Bellevue, 10 minutes from here. And we are going to be demanding our rights as workers, that the company respect us, that they respect the democratic process that we're going through right now. And I would like to invite every single one of you to be there with us on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Alex Zimmerman.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm Alex Zimmerman, yeah. Yeah, I'm Alex Zimmerman. I want to speak something about violation, about crime, and about police department. It's very interesting for me, because police department for me for 35 years acting like a political police, like a Gestapo. Prosecute me 5 times. Nobody, 5 times? Prosecute is good. You know what it means? Political prosecution is very interesting. Trump have only 4 times. I have 5. So I'm better than Trump. I know this. But another point, what is absolutely critical, for 35 years, I only one man who you give many trespasses and interruption. One man, Jewish man, who you treat like a Nazi Gestapo pig. Oh, I forgot. Happy Jewish year, you know what it means now, and for another 5,000 years. Yep, absolutely. Viva Trump, viva New American Revolution, stand up, slave, and happy cow. We need to cleanse this dirty chamber from this bandita, you
Okay,
know
you're
what I
not
mean?
talking about anything to do with the work of the city council, so I'm going to ask you to direct your words towards something that we actually work on.
I speak about agenda number 1, about crime. Yeah, you have crime. You have crime. Because policemen not good. 2 policemen staying here. Yeah, why? Only for Alex Zimmerman. Exactly. This is exactly what has happened. And about another policeman action, for last 2 years I have 20 tickets for $3,000. In every ticket I bring in court, traffic ticket, I bring in court. In every hearing cost $3,000.
Again, this has nothing to do with the work of the city council, and that's your second warning. If I have to tell you again, I'm going to ask you to leave.
I talk about policemen. What is problem? This exactly here. Why you interrupt me? Yeah, you see this? This here, black and white. Yeah. Domestic violence action with proclamation. This exactly what is I talking. It's a package. You thinking the policeman is different than you? You
Okay,
doing everything.
I'm going to ask you to leave, Mr. Zimmerman. You're not addressing the council work. So can I ask you to leave, please, and ask the police to give them an escort?
No,
out?
I don't understand. I'm talking
you're
about
out.
exactly an agenda. Why are you doing this?
I'm asking you to leave, please.
No, you cannot do this because
Yes,
they're doing exactly what
can.
is supposed to be. Policeman is a part of your business, and you are a Nazi pig. And pure anti-Semite.
Do we have anybody else signed up for public comment?
That is the end of our pre-registered list, though we do still have
Okay,
some
Mr.
time
Zimmerman,
remaining.
you were interrupting our session here.
We do still have some time remaining in oral
Okay.
communication, so at this point, I'd ask if there's anyone else joining us, either online or in chambers, who would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. I will reiterate that we cannot take any additional comments in support of item 10B. So, if it is
still
in
is in
support,
support,
it's,
so.
yeah, unfortunately, we won't.
Sorry.
Yep.
But you can send us an email. That would be great. Well, you're going to vote tonight, so it's too late. Not really. You can still send it.
Dr. Mercer, I see your hand if you want to come forward.
As you know, I should be in Africa, but I had to rebook my ticket, so I had the opportunity to speak to you again and bring to your attention parking again. I asked 2 weeks ago for the parking regulations so I could review them, and I didn't get them until after 2 of my vehicles were towed. I've also asked for the delineation of where the Bellevue right-of-way is and where it's public property on the stretch from Southeast 16th to Southeast 20th on 156th. Jock is working with me now, and she heard these complaints yesterday and may have already gotten some information to you regarding this. Generally speaking, the Bellevue police are very helpful. I was very disappointed to hear that my new friend, who just spoke before the other gentleman, if I can say gentleman, is having difficulty with her vulnerable 18-year-old. I'm sure you will talk to the police and make sure that they behave properly to people with disabilities. You know, there is the Americans with Disabilities thing, and that's very
Dr.
important.
Mercer, we'd love to hear what your comments are.
Yeah. Like I say, I get so much support when I'm dealing with homeless people and they have mental illness problems that I, that are putting me in danger, and the police are right there to help me. Most of the time, I am so happy with the Bellevue Police Department. I was very disappointed to hear what my friend just said. I just met her the other day, and she does have degrees in sociology, so she's worth listening to. I've got more, but get on, and I'll work with. I'd like to speak to Conrad, and I wanted to speak to John, only to find out he retired. So who took John's place? You took John's place, okay. I hope I can talk to you guys before I leave for Africa. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did not see any additional hands. I'll do one final call out. Okay, I don't see any additional hands, Mayor. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. We have a report from our city manager, Ms. Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Tonight, I'm very pleased to invite some members of our Community Development Department up. They are here to provide a highlight of a program that was launched in 2023 as the state funding for the eviction prevention pilot program was eliminated. The Housing Accord program is a voluntary program that supports landlords and tenants in finding alternatives to help reduce evictions and prevent homelessness. And the program has provided a touch point and assistance for both landlords and tenants needing help to navigate some pretty difficult situations. So we have Assistant Director Mike McCormick-Huntleman here this evening, Natalie Daniels of our Conflict Resolution Center, she's the manager, and Julia Devin, Housing Accord Program Coordinator. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, City Manager Carlson, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Malakuchian, Council Member. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. Before we get started and introducing the Conflict Resolution Center and the Housing Accord Program, I did want to provide a brief update. As many of you know, out in the community as well as on council, Marcy McReynolds retired last April after 10 years of service. And so we celebrated her contributions to the city. We did a national search far and wide to look for the expertise to lead the Conflict Resolution Center moving forward and found that expertise in-house. So Natalie Daniels has been serving with Conflict Resolution Center in some capacity since 2009. She's a trained lawyer, but don't let that scare you. She knows her business around mediation and conciliation and conflict resolution. So I'm excited to introduce her to you tonight, as well as Julia Devin, who's been doing an outstanding job with our Housing Accord program. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Natalie.
Thank you. Julia is also a lawyer, by the way. If I'm guilty, she's guilty. So thank you, Mike, for that introduction. Thank you, council members, for inviting us to speak with you. I have been fully invested in the work of the Conflict Resolution Center since I started as a volunteer in 2009. I'm delighted to join you now as the new manager. This brief is for information purposes only. I'm going to start with a little background about the Conflict Resolution Center, which is going to be celebrating its 30th anniversary next year. Our mission is to increase the problem-solving capacity of our community. Basically, we help put out people fires. Our conflict resolution service is available to those living or working in Bellevue and Kirkland. We also maintain membership in Resolution Washington, which is a statewide umbrella organization of 21 dispute resolution centers. Our relationship with Resolution Washington allows us to access state grant funds that account for roughly half of our program budget. The Conflict Resolution Center handles more than 500 cases a year. These are mostly neighbor-to-neighbor and landlord-tenant cases. These cases come to us directly and are also referred to by us by other city departments, including issues that come to council or the city manager. We have numerous community partners as well. We're able to deliver this free service because we have a vital volunteer program. We have a pool of roughly 50 volunteers trained in negotiation and conflict coaching, with about 20 of them actively taking cases. Our diverse volunteer cadre reflects the cultures and languages spoken in Bellevue. We also offer workshops in communication, listening, and other conflict resolution skills. For the last 2 years, we've focused on creating alternatives to eviction with our Housing Accord program. I will now turn it over to Julia to talk about that.
Thanks, Natalie, and thank you, council members. Happy to be here and tell you about our program. The Housing Accord works like the center does to prevent evictions and promote housing stability, particularly with immigrant, low-income, and multifamily housing communities. We work cross-culturally and empower residents and property managers to work together to find some common solutions that work for everyone and avoid evictions and strengthen their communities. Our services include one-on-one coaching, where we work with tenants or landlords, and direct negotiation between landlords and tenants to resolve back rent issues, but also maintenance requests, lease violations, and tenant-to-tenant conflicts. We refer tenants to other resources, both within the city and outside as well. The Housing Accord program, as was mentioned, grew out of the work we did during the pandemic. to keep tenants housed and get landlords paid. During the pandemic, the state mandated that dispute resolution centers negotiate repayment plans between landlords and tenants. And our caseload increased from around 300 a year to 2,800 over the 2 years of the mandatory program. We had up to an 82% resolution rate and keeping about 9,000 people housed and their landlords made whole. So the relationships with the landlords and the practices we developed during that time have been carried over with our present non-mandatory program and working with the Housing Accord. In 2024, of August 24, the center was selected to be one of 10 cities in the U.S. to participate in the National League of Cities Eviction Prevention Learning Lab. And while the center took the lead, we worked closely with the Office of Housing, our Human Services, Arch, and others within the city. This 9-month collaboration consisted of monthly learning labs that focused on best practices and innovation in eviction prevention, court support, and tenant-landlord outreach communication and engagement. The center was invited to present at our first meeting our best practices in eviction prevention, and we also conducted an early referral pilot as our final project. The pilot was successful, and we now have a final report that's detailing our findings, a blog on the National League of Cities website, and are working to expand our early referral network. The purpose of the early referral pilot, I'll tell you a little bit about. It was pretty straightforward. It was just to receive cases early in the eviction process so that we increase the likelihood of resolution and help landlords and tenants avoid evictions and homelessness for tenants. We partnered with the King County Housing Authority and Allied Residential Property Management Company and 24 of their property managers. We completed 116 cases during the 5-month pilot, which was from November to March. The design was straightforward. Property managers included this flyer when they gave out pay or vacate notices to alert the tenants about a possible eviction. And then we also transferred this flyer into Russian and Spanish after we met with property managers to see what might be the most useful. And then both property managers and our organization tracked the data over time to see what the case outcomes were. I'm happy to say that it was successful, and we showed that working with tenants early in the eviction process increases the likelihood of a resolution that helps both landlords and tenants avoid what is often a long and costly eviction process in court. So specifically, our findings showed that managers can play a really significant role in resolving cases early right on site before it's escalated at all. About 41% of the 983 notices that were given out during the pilot were resolved on site. And then more people called the Bellevue Conflict Resolution Center, and our resolution rate also increased to about 90% of the cases being resolved or having no further action. And then most of the time, our cases involved coaching, and where we work one-on-one with a tenant, and that was also shown to be the most effective means of resolving the cases. So there's a copy of the early referral pilot report, and it's also on our website of the city. So going forward, we recognize that the Housing Accord and early referral to conflict resolution actually works, and so we're promoting that. Since the program started in September of 23, we've completed 432 cases and helped people stay housed. Going forward, we want to expand and continue to build our relationships with the landlords and property managers, as well as work with human service organizations so that they can start to refer tenants to us early, especially the ones that are working on rental assistance and helping them. And we're continually improving our data collection, and we're working with residents to strengthen their communities by building relationships and things between tenants to tenants. So we're excited about these results and the relationships we've built and with property managers, tenants, and community groups. And so we're looking forward to continuing to get the word out that the city has this program and that it's actually effective. So thank you for your support of our center. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out or let us know.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see, I'm sorry. Consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're going to take a little break here. We'll come back at 10 after. back in session, and we have two study session items in front of us. So City Manager, would you like to introduce them?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor, and council members. So our first study session is an information only, and this is regarding the public benefit rating system, which is a state-authorized, county-run program that allows homeowners to apply to reclassify their property as open space to qualify for a tax benefit. The program has specific criteria and process that's involved in assessing the properties to be approved, and that involves both the city council and the county council and requires approval from both bodies. In addition, the city must review the parcel with the council at a public meeting, and that will be covered by staff when that's scheduled later this fall. Tonight, you will receive information about the program and the specific property in Bellevue that's seeking access to the PBRS program. So from Community Development, we have Planning Director Tara Johnson, and I'd like to introduce Assistant City Attorney Katie White. This is her first time in front of the council. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tara.
Thank you, City Manager Carlson, for the introduction. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. We're here this evening, as City Manager Carlson mentioned, to provide council with an overview of the PBR's program. We'll talk a little bit about the last time it was before council as well. A few of you may recall that. So tonight's overview and presentation is really for information only. It's an opportunity for us to go into the details of the program in advance of a public hearing which has been scheduled for October 14th, so we'll be back to you then. And then tonight is also an opportunity for you to ask us questions and for us to bring back responses to questions that we may not know the answers to at this point. So we'll start off, provide some background on the PBRS program. We'll talk about the process. The process is not super straightforward. It's new to several of you. So we'll go into some detail there. We'll provide some context on where the site is located. We'll talk about our role with the overall review process and talk about the staff analysis, as well as when we'll be bringing back more details on the analysis and then the recommendation, which will all occur at the October 14th public hearing. And then we'll conclude with next steps. So a little bit of background to provide just some context for the program. In 1970, the Washington State Legislature enacted the Open Space Taxation Act as an incentive for property owners to preserve open space, farmland, and timberland on property. In return for preservation and conservation, eligible portions of the property could be taxed at a lower rate. It also provides authority for the county to adopt a public benefit rating system, which could set open space priorities. King County has adopted a program under that code, King County Code Section 2036, and you'll hear us refer to it at several times during the presentation tonight. Consistent with the act, the purpose of the King County's PBRS program is to encourage conservation within the county, really focusing on natural resources, including resources that are located within city boundaries, like this application, really with the intent to maintain wildlife habitat, open space, wetlands and streams, forests, and productive farmlands. Since the property is located within the city of Bellevue, both jurisdictions, King County and the city of Bellevue, are responsible for evaluating the property and assessing whether it meets and qualifies for the open space conservation. Each jurisdiction has to hold a public hearing on the application and request, and the act requires that both county and city have to identically approve the application for this classification to go into effect. So both jurisdictions have to approve the application for the request to be granted. If there are conditions tied to the application, then the conditions need to be identical with both the county and the city's approval. If the application is approved, then the tax benefit would begin in 2026 for this application if it were approved before the end of the year. A similar identical application on this property was submitted in 2022 and was denied by the city council at that time. There are also, as the map shows on this slide, there are also 2 other properties under this program which were enrolled, and our understanding is that was prior to annexation in the city. These properties are the Sambika Camp Retreat and Vassar Park. So those are the 2 that you see highlighted on the map there. So a little bit about the process. The process really starts, of course, once a formal application was submitted. And then the next step is, of course, for us to hold, for a site visit to occur, which occurred on May 1st. That included both city staff as well as staff from King County along with the property owner. After review and some technical issues that required resolution, we scheduled the study session that's being held tonight. In addition, King County has also scheduled a public hearing with their hearing examiner, who is delegated authority to hold a hearing under their code. Following the hearing, a recommendation from the hearing examiner will be forwarded to the King County Council. And of course, as I've mentioned before, we've scheduled a public hearing for October 14th, which will provide opportunity for public testimony, of course, and then council to have further discussion, for staff to provide any additional information that council requires or would like. And then we'll also be providing staff analysis and our recommendation at that time. Council could decide to take action on the 14th if you choose. And if either jurisdiction denies the application or the approvals are not identical, then that's where the process would end and the application is denied. However, if both Bellevue and King County identically approve the applications, then the next step would be for an open space taxation agreement to be recorded, and then the tax reduction would go into effect for 2026 and onwards from there. So to provide some detail on the actual site, it's located, as you may have heard with public comments, located in the Bridle Trails neighborhood. So there's definite interest from the community there. So this, the site in yellow with the yellow boundary around it is the application site. And we'll go into more details about the acreage and the area that's being requested for conservation. It's encumbered with 2 existing easements, so it has the bridle trail, a bridle trails easement called the Trails End easement, which is really been recorded and owned by the Homeowners Association, and then there's the Energize East Side Puget Sound Energy Olympic Pipeline easement as well. So this graphic goes into more detail. The total site area, the boundary shown in red, is 1.38 acres. As you can see from this graphic, there's a Trails End easement, which is owned by the Homeowners Association, and all property owners that are part of this development have access to that trail. There's also a 100-foot wide Puget Sound Energy Olympic Pipeline easement that exists on the property. And then the area that's hatched in yellow is the property owner's home. There's under the Act and the King County Code, there's certain areas that are not eligible for conservation, and that's the home, the driveway, landscaping, and other associated uses. So that area we are estimating to be about 0.28 acres, which we're anticipating, and we'll go through this in more detail with the staff analysis, about 1.1 acres we're estimating to be eligible or potentially eligible under the program. So everything that's outside that yellow area, which includes the PSC Olympic Pipeline easement as well as the Trails End easement. And we can come back to that if there are council questions. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Katie, and she's going to cover a portion of the presentation.
Tara. Good evening, council members. Thanks for hearing this matter tonight. So Mr. Tamiri's application, which is an attachment to the agenda memo materials which were submitted, identifies that he requested open space classification for 1.33 acres of his 1.38 acre property. As Tara just discussed, at most 1.10 acres could potentially be eligible. 0.2 acres consists of his home and the immediate surrounding areas such as his patio, driveway, backyard, which cannot qualify as open space. Mr. Tamiri's application, as you can see when you review it, has requested that a number of open space resource categories be applied to his property. These open space resources come from King County Code Chapter 20.36. The criteria that are set forth in the code must be met in order for any resource category to apply. Open space categories set forth in the code are assigned points, which then correlate with the tax deduction. The categories that Mr. Tamiri has requested total 150 points, and if granted in full, this would result in a 90% tax reduction for the subject area that he's applied for. And this area would therefore be taxed at 10% of its currently assessed value, resulting in a tax reduction of just over $8,300. Because the city of Bellevue receives 13% of that tax, the city of Bellevue would see just over $1,100 less in taxes on his property if granted in full. So this next slide is focused, it's intended to be an overview of the valuation criteria that the city council must look at when considering this application. The city council is one of the two legislative authorities that considered the application, the other being King County, must consider certain factors when evaluating. So pursuant to the act, the city council must consider the resulting revenue loss or tax shift, as well as whether the application will conserve or enhance natural, cultural, or scenic resources, protect streams, protect soil resources, enhance recreational opportunities, among other considerations focused on enhancing natural lands. Relatedly, as Tara has touched on, the city council must also look at the factors which are outlined in King County's PBRS program, which is codified at Chapter 20.36. That program has to be read consistent with the act, as the act is what authorizes King County to create such a program. The criteria for the open space criteria, like I said, must be read consistent with the act, which is the conservation of natural lands.
Can I interrupt you for 1 sec to direct council to this in your paperwork on the dais here? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So King County Code 20.36.100 subsection C sets forth 20 different open space resource categories. As Mayor Robinson just pointed out, this has been provided as a handout to you all as council, so you can review it, but we will also be going over the resource categories in greater detail at the public hearing and specifically focus on the resource categories that he has applied for, which I believe is over 6 or 8. It's a fairly large number of resource categories that he's applied for. Open space resource categories under the PBRS program include areas like urban open space, ecological enhancement, farm and agricultural land, forest stewardship, trail linkage, significant wildlife or salmon habitat, public recreation area, among a few others. If any one of the 20 open space resource categories outlined in the code have been met on a property, King County Code does authorize that bonus points can be assigned to categories. An example would be resource restoration of a wildlife habitat. The chart on this slide identifies the corresponding tax reduction based on the number of points. In order to qualify for a tax reduction, a property needs to have at least 5 points, and then the reduction increases up to no more than 90% if there are 35 points or above. And with that, I will pass it back to Tara.
So just want to recap the process a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, we started off with a site visit on May 1st with county staff, Bellevue staff, and the property owner. And an identical application was submitted in 2022. There were 2 study sessions with City Council, and then following that, the application was denied. We have been reviewing the application using King County code, as well as King County staff has also been reviewing the application using the code as well as state law. And of course, at the public hearing, we'll be providing you with more information on our analysis. We'll be walking through the open space resource categories that the applicant has requested credit for, and then walking through the staff analysis and our overall recommendation on October 14th. So next steps is a public hearing, and then opportunity for council to take action if you're prepared to do that. And then, of course, as we've mentioned earlier, the tax exemption would only be granted if both the city and council approvals are identical. So with that, turn things back to you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to open this up for any questions or comment. Does anybody have anything? Go ahead, Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you for the presentation. What was the basis for the denial in 2022?
So in 2022, the denial was focused on the statutory factors. So a resolution was adopted, and it outlines that the city considered the tax loss to the city, particularly when there's only so many ways the city can recoup taxes via property taxes. And then it also looked at the statutory factors that I briefly touched on, like conservation of lands, protections of stream, soil resources, and ultimately felt that this property, which is in a developed community and that is also burdened by easements, did not fit within the intent of the act.
Okay, and then you mentioned that Vasa Park and Sambica were granted exemptions and prior possibly to incorporation into the city, but do you know specifically when that was?
We can, I don't know when specifically that was, but we can bring that back
Okay, and then the King County hearing examiner will hear this
tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
At 1 o'clock, yeah.
When, do you have any idea when we might know their decision?
My understanding is their process is once the King County hearing examiner holds the public hearing, the hearing examiner has 10 days to issue their recommendation, and then it gets forwarded to the King County Council. There's an appeal period after the recommendation. I believe that's about 24 days. And then following that, if there's no appeal filed, then it moves to the King County Council.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Bhargava.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Building on the question actually that Councilmember Hamilton asked, I want to start with 2022. Did King County approve that application?
Yes, they did.
And is it fair to assume that the intent of the program, both at the city and the county level, is generally aligned? Otherwise, we'd not be looking for identical recommendations. What was the driver for their approval in our denial?
The last time around, I would say that we did not use the King County code. We used, so we have the ability to use the King County code to assess the application or the act under state law. And our process the last time around was to use the provisions under the act and not utilize the King County code requirements. This time, we're utilizing both. So we're ensuring that we meet the intent of the act and reviewing it against the King County code. King County's interpretation, they reviewed it against their code, and their analysis was that they felt like it met the criteria.
Got it. One more question. Is there any intent, and I can study this further, but if you can help, of developable capacity? Like, is it the intention shouldn't be that I have a parcel that is encumbered to an extent there the developable capacity is very limited, and then we try to get tax benefit from the program. Is that part of, because the criteria for the 20 sort of open space categories is clear, but that developable capacity and how we think about that trade-off isn't?
So I can start off and then have Katie weigh in as well. The intent of the act is, as we outlined, is really to enhance opportunities for preservation of wetlands, streams, critical areas, things like that, or to preserve areas that could otherwise be developable. So it's both aspects. And as we'll walk through at the hearing, there are a number of different areas, so things like forest conservation, ecological enhancement projects, things like that, wetlands, streams, salmonoid habitat, all of that. Those are all different categories. There's also a category for things like historic preservation. So you could meet a number of different criteria, and so it depends on what you're applying for. But the intent is, if you have something of value under the act that meets certain criteria, then, and it can be preserved, then it's set aside. Or if you have area that's developable, then it could be set aside as preservation. Is there anything else you want to add?
I can add to that just a little bit. This is in the legislative intent of the statute, which is RCW 84.34. It focuses and discusses that if someone has lands that essentially could be developed, they could sell their land to a developer, make millions off of that sale, but they're choosing not to. They shouldn't be taxed at the highest and best use of their property. They should be taxed at the current use of their property, which could be open space. So maintaining a large area of land as farmland as opposed to selling it to a developer. So that was, appears to be the impetus for the act. And so then in this case, with this property being burdened by easements, the landowner couldn't develop the portions of the property that he's seeking to qualify under as open space.
Got it. So that would not qualify. Those areas encumbered wouldn't qualify.
Staff will be providing their recommendation on October 14th,
Okay,
but
thank
that's
you.
a consideration, yes.
Okay, Councilmember Sumadaria.
Thank you. I have two questions. So the first question is, I see that Sambika and Vasa Park was approved. While you're finding out the timeline when they were approved, are there a lot of similarity between the three properties?
To our initial assessment, we are not seeing a whole lot of similarities with the Sambika Camp Retreat, which is an active recreational use, as well as the Vasa Park, which is more of a private recreational use, and the subject property, which is single family property. So definitely different in nature.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is, if it gets approved, we're going to have a huge reduction in your tax revenue. What our plan? How are we able to recover that?
That would be something that is a fiscal impact to the city, so we would be losing that revenue.
Okay, would that be like divided out to other property owners?
Oh, are you asking, is there going to be a tax shift?
Yeah.
Not if this not if the specific property is, if it's the only property that we're experiencing this tax impact on, then no.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask, and then I'll let Councilmember Lee go next. So to me, when I look at the criteria, the one that seems the most important and the hardest to attribute to this is public access. So when I look at Vasa Park or Camp Sambika and see all the public access to that, I question how much general public access there is to this property. Can you explain that to me?
Well, there's access from the trails end easement, so that's I'm not sure to what extent that is publicly accessible, that's accessible to everyone that lives in that trails and subdivision or development. That's something we can get more clarity on. The property owner, when we held a site visit in May, mentioned that he may be open to providing public access from the street onto that connected to the Trails End easement. But there's nothing recorded or anything, or he hasn't provided any documentation to state that he'd be willing to do that. Just verbally mentioned that.
Okay. So, I think about Milt Swanson's property where he had a barn and acreage that was adjacent to parkland. And that, to me, is property that could have been developed, but wasn't. And I think he could have successfully applied for this to preserve the barn and the property. I'm not seeing it yet with this property, but I'm anxious to learn more from the public hearing. Can you tell me what kind of a precedent could this set for other bridle trail landowners who have identical pieces of property next to him on either side of him?
I think each application would be assessed based on the criteria that they're submitting for. So we'd have to evaluate it based on their specific site constraints or site situations or contexts. So that would be hard to state right now, does this set a precedent? But essentially, if there was a very similar property and under very similar circumstances, then there could be a precedent set. And if there's anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit more. So this is a legislative determination, which is reviewed by an arbitrary and capricious standard. So if essentially an identical property in bridle trails applied with the similar Trails End easement running through it, when you apply the arbitrary and capricious standard, that would be difficult to deny that property if it has an identical component.
Yep, got it. Okay, Councilmember Lee.
When was this code set?
The PBRS code, it was created shortly after the act, which started in 1970. King County has developed their PBRS program over the years.
1970.
But it was shortly after the act in 1970.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think what do you call, avoidance of this tax should be applied based on conditions. And the conditions seem to me may have changed. It's that long time ago. So the goal is correct. We want to have a goal to open space and all that stuff, but I always believe that the devil is in the detail. So how do we look at the situation now? We may not need that much open space. We may have other questions. They may ask us a very good question. It's access to it. There was not a condition, I assume, because if it is, it would be already included. So, but I think we need to make sure what are the conditions. I think we as legislators today, we need to evaluate whether it meets the current condition. We believe it's relevant to what we have today. Change in 60 years, lots of things change. So in order to do that, we have to look at each condition and then talk about it. That's why 2022, we denied it, right? Because we probably we didn't follow the same condition, even though the reason is, well, we don't want to lose the tax. Tax is $1,100, that's not that much. So the point is, situations change, we need to look at the conditions. I believe the condition has to be, once we agree to the conditions, part of the condition would be, is it fair? Does it help us to meet whatever we want to protect today, whether it be open space, whatever? And so we have to do that. I think the council need to go through a deliberation. What are the conditions today that we are looking for, that we are willing to give them a abatement on tax, and whatever that may be. And then in order to do that, we have to spend some time. And I don't have time to go through each of these. I mean, it's many pages of it. So I'm not sure which condition is still relevant.
We
Which
don't need to
condition?
decide tonight. Tonight's just
No, I
information.
understand that. But even if we say that it's okay, I have no basis to say it's okay. Because especially it was denied in 2022 for one simple reason. We don't want to lose $1,100. Same reason exists today. I can say the same thing. Right? So that's why I think we need to go a little bit deeper, just to see what are the conditions we really want to meet. And if doesn't meet those conditions, we don't need. Council is not going to approve. I'm not going to approve it. Only if it meets the conditions, then I would approve it. Then there's an open hearing. We already heard from one of the public and the public testimony. She come up with an idea, which I think she articulated, and Mayor actually reaffirmed, not reaffirmed, Mayor actually questioned that. She actually added her comment to that, which is fair. I think we all would be able to add more questions if I had more time to look at all these other things. Many of them are still relevant, absolutely, but some of them may not. And I like to make sure that I understand what it is, what conditions we're applying, what conditions should we apply that's new, what condition maybe we should not even consider. So I'm not ready to do anything, and I want to know what is fair. I want to have a conversation first. Unless you can tell me now, and I'm ready to spend some time to listen to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee. We are going to be going into much more detail at the public hearing, so we'll walk through those 5 or 6 pages you received. We're not going to walk through all of them, but we'll walk through what he's requested. He thinks he meets each of the criteria, so we'll walk through that and also walk you through what our recommendation is or our analysis as to whether he meets the criteria or not. So.
And any council member who wants a staff briefing before the hearing is welcome to have one.
Are you saying that you don't need our approval tonight?
No, it's information only.
Just information only, okay. So wait, I'm just offering my suggestions.
Yes.
I hope that when you have a chance going forward, tell me. Okay, I already told you what I wanted. So I will look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have a second study session item, and City Manager, go ahead and introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. Bellevue has a vision and is a safe city, and we take crime seriously. That's at the council level, the community level, the staff level. In March, Council directed staff to conduct some additional research and bring back draft code for consideration related to mandatory minimum sentences for specific offenses. Tonight, we have our City Attorney, Trisna Tanis, and our Chief Prosecutor, Steve Penner, back to present their research, offer options for your consideration, and answer your questions. This is a council-initiated item, so staff is here to support you in the direction that you consider providing this evening. With that, I will turn it over to our City Attorney, Trisna.
Thank you, City Manager Carlson. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members. Thank you for having us here tonight. Steve and I are presenting the mandatory minimum item for your consideration. For direction, we are looking for you to consider directing us to prepare this ordinance to imposing mandatory minimum sentences on certain repeat offenders of certain theft crimes. Our agenda will first recall council direction. This is back in the fall of last year, as well as in March of this year. We'll go through the components of the draft code. We'll explain how we drafted the code the way we did, and then we'll provide additional information, some of which you asked for in your March meeting, but also some of which we feel like it would be helpful in your consideration of this item. So recalling council direction, the intention that you had stated in the fall of last year was to reduce public disorder crimes in Bellevue. We brought this to study session on March 11th. And during that study session, you asked us to bring back draft code in 6 months. This is the 6-month timeline. and as well as include more information, including data from other cities. Everett and Marysville have adopted similar ordinances, and then updates about the Bellevue Community Court, which at the time was not yet opened. So first, going through the components of the draft code, the crimes that we are including are theft, third-degree crimes. Repeat offender is defined as 18 years or older, and the defendant would have 2 or more convictions of theft in Washington State within the past 2 years. The minimum sentence would be 30 days, and we have built in some discretionary provisions. The first one is if there is a substantial risk of mental or physical harm to the defendant, by that sentence, the court may order electronic home monitoring in lieu of jail sentence. The second discretionary provision is, if eligible, defendants may still go through diversion programs, which includes a community court. So going through the basis for how we drafted the code, first, we focused on crimes that are most impactful to Bellevue, and this is theft third degree. You heard last week that the crime rate in Bellevue is going down, which is great, excellent news. Regardless, theft third degree is still the highest reported crime in Bellevue year over year. You see that on the table at the bottom of the slide. Theft, of course, places a financial burden on retailers, customers, as well as our sales tax revenue. It erodes in our confidence of societal fairness. And then, as you, I'm sure, have experienced, and retailers have needing to do, is to put everyday items behind locked cabinets or metal gates in order to protect the merchandise. We also focus on offenders who are most negatively impacting Bellevue. These are the repeat offenders. We carefully consider the characteristics of offenders who would be subject to this ordinance. We understand that jail sentence is life-changing. It is very serious. While we, of course, want to hold offenders accountable, we also wanted to be careful and mindful that it is a big impact. So we are targeting those who are actively reoffending and disregarding our laws. And that led us to defining repeat offenders as those with 2 or more prior theft convictions, again, in Washington State within the last 2 years. The third rationale or basis for how we drafted the code is that we wanted to maintain balance between the legislative and the judiciary. So sentencing, such as this one, is something that the legislature is doing, but sentencing typically is under the realm of the judiciary. So we felt it is important to maintain that balance between the legislative and the judicial branches of government. We understand and acknowledge that we want to make sure that we put out there that there's a message that Bellevue doesn't tolerate repeat offenders. We wanted to have that strong message in order to be able to potentially deter potential offenders from committing crimes in Bellevue. And we want to do so by imposing automatic and consistent sentencing on similarly situated defendants. We do this and be able to also protect the public at the same time. These objectives are met by us being able to draft the code in a way that is pretty narrow. Again, to focus on those crimes that are most impactful to Bellevue and those offenders that are repeat offenders. In terms of judicial balance, we also wanted to be able to maintain some judicial discretion. We want the prosecutors and the court to be able to be responsive to unique facts and circumstances of each case. So in this way, we did build some carve-outs within the draft code. The allowance for electronic home monitoring, again, if there is that substantial risk of harm, as well as to be able to use other tools that may be more effective, including diversion programs and community court. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve to walk through the rest of our presentation.
Thank you. So there are two other cities that have passed similar ordinances, Marysville and Everett. And we've reached out to both of those cities to see how those ordinances are working. It can be difficult to gather data in this particular area because a lot of different things impact crime trends. As we've talked about recently, the crime trends in Bellevue right now are very good and going down. So it can be hard to look at any particular data set and say for sure that it's because of a particular ordinance. Anecdotally, we've been told that they believe it's working well. Some of the anecdotes to the effect of they're seeing a reduction, they think now, in repeat offenders. So maybe not so much in the first offense, but they're hoping that they're not seeing that third offense now. And also that the jail time has had the benefit for some defendants that it gives them time to dry out and be more open to treatment options by getting some jail time and away from substances. We don't have any conclusory data on the efficacy of this. It's a complex system. It can be hard to prove a negative. It's hard to prove deterrence, because if it works, then there's nothing to show. You're not looking at anything. But based on the conversations we've had with them, they seem to have positive feelings about how it's working. So, I don't know. All right, and so Bellevue Community Court, we were asked to bring back information about that as well. It launched officially on July 15th at the Bellevue Library. We have about 20 people in the program right now. We have capacity to increase above that. We look for defendants who will benefit from an increased level of intervention, supervision, and support. So these are people who are really, really on the edges of society. And the way it works is that the court is held in a large room in the library, away from the courthouse, to kind of emphasize that this is an alternative way of handling the case. And then in a large room next door are service providers, mental health service providers, substance abuse, housing, employment, insurance, bus passes, kind of whatever anybody needs, food. And the idea is that these are people who need this extra support more than they might get normally through probation. And we think that they'll be successful. And the main reason, at least from my standpoint, is that it helps reduce recidivism. That these are people we're identifying that we think will not repeat if they get the supports that they need. Not everyone is eligible for this. Most of our participants right now are charged with theft. But if you have any violent felony history or any current felony charges or any sex offender history, then you will not be allowed into this program. We did some data analysis of kind of how things are now versus how things would be if the ordinance is adopted. We looked at how many people would be captured by this and what kind of sentences they're receiving now. On average, the number of people that we would expect to see, we prosecute about 700 cases of theft per year. About 10% of those people would have qualifying convictions in the last 2 years that would put them into this ordinance. Of those people who've been convicted, on average, they've received a sentence of about 20 days. So close to, but not quite what the ordinance says. We've indicated here that a 20-day sentence usually means 13 days of real jail after good time. So a 30-day sentence would be 20 days after good time. It's a tool that correctional facilities use to help maintain order. You can lose your good time, and you could end up doing the full time. There is a cost associated with this by increasing the amount of jail time. Assuming we'd have 700 cases a year and 10% of those people would qualify under this statute, that's about 70 defendants per year. The additional real jail time from what we're already doing to what we would do under this ordinance is about 490 jail days per year. And at the costs that we pay the SCORE jail facility and what we expect those costs to be next year, the range of the additional jail cost is what's on the slide here, about $83,000 to $120,000 additional. Again, kind of going back to the components of the draft code, the crime is theft in the third degree. That's the legal definition. That includes any type of theft, whether it's from mail, from your car, from your porch, from a store. All of that, as a prosecutor, that's theft in the third degree. The repeat offenders, again, this would only apply to people 18 years or older. We don't have jurisdiction over juveniles for the most part in Bellevue. And we've defined the convictions to be any conviction for theft, first, second, or third degree, or organized retail theft in the state of Washington in the past 2 years. If that is met, if that's the situation, then ordinarily right now, the sentence for theft in the third degree, the judge has discretion to give anywhere from 0 days in jail up to 364 days in jail. This would change that so that the minimum would be 30, and they would only have discretion to go between 30 days in jail and 364 days in jail. I might point out when a judge imposes jail, if the judge gives 30 days in jail, the balance of that 364 will be suspended and held over the defendant's head for a probationary period that's usually 2 years. If they violate the conditions of their probation, the judge can and will usually impose additional jail and then put them right back onto that probation. The discretionary provisions, there's 2 listed here. One is that if a defendant, and this can happen, if a defendant has a substantial risk of mental or physical harm, then the judge would be allowed to convert it to electronic home monitoring. This is in there for 2 reasons. One, to protect the mental and physical harm of people, but also it directs the court that that's the only acceptable way to convert this. The way that would work in practice, it would be a burden would be on the defendant to show that this is true. Generally, they would need documentation from a medical professional to establish that. The SCORE jail and the King County Jail, which we use, have medical facilities. They have psychological facilities. They're able to take care of most people while they serve their sentence. And then finally, we included a provision that just makes it explicit that defendants may participate in diversion programs like community court, even if they might otherwise fall into this ordinance. And that's a way to encourage treatment for people who we think would be good candidates to successfully comply with the treatment requirements.
So we'll hand it back to you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So Councilmember Newhouse, you brought this forward initially, I think in March. Would you like to start us off?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would. So thank you so much for all the great work, Steve and Trisha, you've put into the ordinance to date, and being here for the excellent presentation. So thank you so much for that. And tonight I think we have a real opportunity to make Bellevue safer for residents, retail workers, business owners, and to support the outstanding work already being done by our police and prosecutor's office. This ordinance reflects, I believe, our values of safety, accountability, and protecting the vibrancy of our community. I want to thank everyone who took the time this evening to weigh in with their strong support of this ordinance, specifically organizations like the Washington Retail Association, Bellevue Chamber, Kemper Development, Wallace Properties, the Bellevue Downtown Association, Greg Cycles, King County Councilmember Reagan Dunn, and countless other retailers and property owners, large and small. I especially want to acknowledge the residents who've emailed the council with heartfelt support and personal stories tonight. In fact, my cashier, Joyce, who works at my local QFC, sent me pictures of yesterday, which has been sent to all of you. She worked yesterday, and they were hit 3 times. Egregiously so, because they were all repeat offenders, and one, you will see a picture of someone backing up with his car and throwing in cases of Heineken, filling up his entire trunk. So I wanted to share that with all my colleagues. So appreciate all that, and all the people who came down tonight too, those who spoke and those that didn't get a chance to speak. Thank you for having your voice heard tonight. But I think the greater point is all these messages, all this support really shows that that support for this ordinance aligns with what the Bellevue Chamber's recent poll showed, that 90% of residents are in favor of this ordinance. That's just not consensus. I would say that's more of a mandate. In Bellevue, our retail workers and grocery store cashiers are more than essential. They're the heartbeat of our neighborhoods. Supporting them means more than gratitude. It means action. If we want to protect jobs, we must protect the people who do them. If we want to keep stores in Bellevue, we must ensure they're safe places to work and shop. Now, Bellevue, we only need to look to our neighbors for a warning. Our neighbors being Redmond, Kroger's closing a store there due to theft and other unsustainable operating conditions. They're closing 5 stores throughout the region, all due to theft. This is not just a public safety issue, it's an economic and affordability issue. Businesses bear the direct costs, as just you've mentioned, lost inventory, raising insurance premiums, added security expenses, and damaged customer trust. These costs are ultimately passed on to the consumer. And during a time where it is very expensive, affordability is a key issue in Bellevue. And here in Bellevue, we've seen the trends. So yes, overall theft increased from 45% of over 1,800 cases in 2019 to 2,600 cases in 2024. Again, that's a 45% increase. More recently, according to the March staff report, shoplifting alone as a category of third-degree theft increased as well, from 1,242 cases in 2023 to 1,417 cases in 2024. That's a 14% increase. And while shoplifting may have decreased in the first 9 months of 2025 per BPD's public safety update a couple of weeks ago, that may very well change as we have yet to hit that busy holiday period. That period that was specifically targeted by BPD during the Stop the Lift campaign. An interesting side note, 40% of those that were arrested during that campaign were repeat shoplifters. So I hear from residents every week about this issue, and I've seen the consequences firsthand. I've seen it in front of my daughter. I've tried to explain to my daughter why someone is running out with a bag full of steaks that they clearly have not paid for. Why did they be able to get away with that? I've heard the complaints from the cashiers time and time again. We don't feel safe here. We can't do anything. What can be done? A 2024 study commissioned by the Retail Industry Leaders Association found that external retail theft events are increasing, but reporting to law enforcement has dropped by nearly half since 2019. Many retailers choose not to report incidents due to limited law enforcement resources, burdensome reporting processes, and a belief that nothing will happen. I want to change that. And we can look to our neighbors in Marysville, which have put a similar ordinance in place in 2023. In Marysville, over half of the 35 repeat offenders chose to enter a treatment program instead of serving their full jail sentence. Jail time has been successfully used as an incentive to help people with addiction issues or other issues, other services that we want to offer to help. Marysville also reported a 17% decrease in people refusing services, meaning they're more open to it and they would rather have the services versus going to jail. So the lesson is clear. Accountability works. Mandatory minimums, when applied with care, can be an effective deterrent. And I think the ordinance for Bellevue follows a best practice according to data that exists from the National Institute of Justice that I found, was that when it is narrowly defined, meaning having a narrow scope, which this currently does, still has judicial discretion, allowing exceptions for mitigating circumstances, the complementary programs, as you mentioned, the diversion, treatment, electronic monitoring, et cetera, and then regular data-driven review, which we do on everything. So absolutely, that would be something we'd want to do in the future. But accountability is key, and this ordinance sends a clear message. If you come to Bellevue to repeatedly commit crimes, you will be arrested, and you will face consequences. And that's not harsh, that's common sense. It's how we protect our workers, our businesses, our residents, and our city. And we recognize that mandatory minimum sentencing comes with costs associated with incarceration and court processing. But those costs are offset through reductions in theft, through a stronger business environment, and restored public confidence. And this ordinance is balanced, holds repeat offenders accountable while giving first-time offenders time and opportunities to reform. The draft code includes discretionary provisions such as eligibility for diversion programs and the option for electronic home monitoring in cases where incarceration may cause substantial harm. So it's firm, but it's fair, it's compassionate, but it's very clear. Bellevue must continue to build this reputation as a city that enforces the law, protects residents, workers, visitors, and does not tolerate this type of repeat theft. So I hope that tonight we can send a message. Bellevue's not a soft target. We stand with our workers, our businesses, and our residents to ensure that everyone lives, works, and plays here feels safe and supported and proud to call Bellevue home. Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the critical role you play in helping reduce crime in our city. We have a comprehensive system in Bellevue for preventing and fighting crime. Our criminal justice system functions so well because it is carefully calibrated and each element supports the others. It's important to be aware of that because changes to one element have an impact on the others and the system at large. The BPD has a crime prevention unit that successfully supports effective and fair ways to reduce crime and improve community safety. The city maintains a comprehensive crime prevention webpage that has a lot of resources that cover a wide range of topics such as block watch programs, ways to prevent car prowling, and a guide for helping parents recognize possible gang involvement of their children, and much more. The city also funds numerous programs through our human services budget that also contribute to increased public safety through its programs that focus on food security, behavioral health, substance use disorders, and health and wellness. And of course, we have a highly trained, accredited police department that fights crime on our streets every day. And as we saw just last week, the members of our police force have been tremendously successful in fighting crime, and they presented us with actual data to prove it. Overall crime is down 28%, shoplifting is down 19%, and car prowls are down 40%. This compelling data proves that the critical role that BPD plays in our comprehensive approach to reducing crime is working, and working very well. Recent data from the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce shows that our residents are extremely satisfied with the work of the BPD and the efforts of all involved in our criminal justice system. As previously mentioned, 91% say they feel safe in their neighborhood. The Chamber's data also points out that concerns over crime and homelessness have declined, and neither top the list of resident concerns. Clap when you can. There's a lot of good news here. The city runs its own adult misdemeanor probation division that is tasked to facilitate rehabilitation and enhance community safety, which they've been very successful at accomplishing. A key element of the probation division's goal to enhance community safety is to reduce the occurrence of repeat criminal activity on the part of its clients. According to actual data that was presented to us earlier this year, only 3.5% of the probation division's clients are involved in future crimes in Bellevue. I don't think it's a stretch to think that adding another week of incarceration is going to raise the recidivism rate when folks are cut off from their social supports, work, and housing for a longer period of time. We can't take our eyes off the goal of reducing crime and increasing public safety, and I think this ordinance does that. The Criminal Prosecution Division, which includes prosecutors such as Mr. Penner, prosecutes misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors, and traffic infractions occurring in Bellevue and assists victims in the process. The Criminal Prosecution Division, which works especially closely with BPD and the Probation Division, is primarily motivated by its commitment to protecting and enhancing the quality of life of Bellevue residents and visitors by enforcing laws, protecting victims, and holding people accountable for criminal behavior. I've heard nothing but positive feedback from BPD and the Probation Division as it relates to their working relationship with the Criminal Prosecution Division and with you specifically, Mr. Penner. They express appreciation for your filing of charges in 88% of the cases they bring to you, and admiration for your ability to successfully prosecute 94% of them. I've also heard it said that you're supportive of their sentencing requests. I don't think we can achieve our crime prevention and public safety goals if you all don't work together extremely well. Everything I've been able to gather, it makes it clear that you do, and a big thanks to you for all of that. Our criminal courts also play a critical role in enhancing public safety. As liaison to the Probation Advisory Board, I have the chance to interact with our judges, prosecutors, public defenders, BPD, city staff, and community members every month. It's a unique opportunity to gain insight into the inner workings of our court system. These folks are bright, dedicated, and highly effective, and the data shows that. Just to note, the first person to successfully complete a sentence through our new community court did so just today. That's an accomplishment worth celebrating and an effort that deserves continued support. I don't think these are major revelations. I do think it's important to remind ourselves that we have a robust, effective system in place for fighting crime and increasing public safety. People are held accountable, and we do what we can to help them make necessary adjustments in their lives, but ultimately it's up to them to do so. It's in this context that we should consider whether or not a minimum mandatory sentencing ordinance could be helpful. We regularly tout our commitment to data-informed decision-making. This council and our city staff, under the direction of our city manager, constantly reinforce the importance of collecting and using data to make decisions. In fact, one of our strategic target areas is high-performance government, in which we clearly state that Bellevue is committed to providing exceptional city services through data-informed and collaborative decision-making. Community members and other stakeholders regularly and rightly push us to follow the data on a wide range of issues. Using data to make decisions that we don't make, using data to make decisions ensures that we don't make decisions based on a hunch or a perception or an emotion. And we can't claim to be committed to data-driven decision-making and only rely on it when it suits a specific goal. Data-driven policymaking is the enemy of perception-based or hunched-based policymaking. There is no data to support the effectiveness of a mandatory minimum sentencing ordinance. While I doubt that adding 7 days to a shoplifting sentence will reduce the likelihood of someone reoffending, if there was data to dispute that, I'd be interested in seeing it and open to change my mind. In the absence of compelling data, I would be willing to rely, at least in part, on the professional judgment of those who are involved in our criminal justice system. And I have a couple of questions, but it's with that in mind, do either of you have a professional opinion on the effectiveness of this mandatory minimum sentencing ordinance? Even though no one involved in our criminal justice system has asked for this so-called tool, and the current code allows for a sentencing request of up to 364 days, and 100% of those that would have qualified under this ordinance just last December got the 30-day sentences. Do you think having this ordinance in place would enhance your ability to reduce crime and make our city safer? Would it help you be more effective?
Well, I guess what I would say is that I try right now to be as effective as I possibly can, and I can right now seek a 30-day sentence when I think it's appropriate. So I guess that would be my answer.
Okay. That's it. Okay, great, thank you. Also too, we heard in public testimony, and we got an email earlier today describing a situation that a local retail establishment encountered, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it if possible. I think you heard the story about an individual who committed multiple trespass offenses and shoplifts over the preceding 3 years. During one such incident, he knowingly violated an active trespass order, brandished a metal club. Turns out that he had previously been convicted of multiple felonies with 16 prior arrests. And just to be clear, is this the kind of individual that would be allowed to participate in community court?
No, that would be someone who'd be disqualified from participating in community court based on the felony history.
Okay.
And also, we don't let people go in who are committing current offenses that are violent. So this is not a program for people who commit assaults or brandish weapons at police officers.
Okay, great, thank you. I thought so, I just wanted to make sure we were all clear. Then based on your standard practice, do you think you'd likely ask a judge to sentence such a defendant when convicted to jail time? And if so, for how long?
So yes, definitely would be asking for jail time with that kind of history and under those circumstances. For how long exactly, it's hard for me to say. Part of my job is to treat each case individually and look specifically at criminal history. I don't know exactly who JN is, but based on the information that Mr. Klein provided, I would expect that our office would have asked for jail substantially in excess of 30 days already. And part of the average that goes into this is there are people that we are already asking for up to 90 days in jail or more, depending on the facts and circumstances.
Okay, thank you. So, in my opinion, we don't have data to support moving this forward, and we've not heard a professional opinion that helps us overcome the lack of data. A hunch or a theory is not good enough for me. I don't believe there is nearly enough support from the highly trained and motivated folks at the city who are actively involved in the work of our criminal justice system to support moving this ordinance forward. While I'm sure it's not intended, passing this ordinance would be a rebuke, would be a vote of no confidence in our prosecutor, probation division, and judges. And I don't think such a rebuke is warranted. And it would take the spotlight off of the success that the BPD is having in reducing crime. BPD does have the data. They can prove that their efforts are paying off. I'm totally open to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars more on public safety, but I would direct that additional money to supporting and expanding the efforts that we know work, like Stop the Lift and others. And what sends a stronger message, a program like Stop the Lift, which includes a robust public awareness campaign that is strongly backed up by the officers of the BPD, or requiring someone to sit in jail for another week or stay home and play video games for another week. Stop the Lift sends the clear message that we're watching and we're coming for you if you get out of line. So I'm ready to sign a check for the BPD, but there's no justification for sending one to our contracted jail provider in Des Moines. I'd like to see us spend hundreds of thousands to provide our officers with more training and professional development opportunities, updated equipment, and other supports. I also believe that we should be looking at increasing our human services funding and at providing support to other elements of our criminal justice system that our data shows will be effective. What we're currently doing is working, and the data proves that. I'm not in favor of changing our current approach based on a hunch. So I'm going to be voting no to this proposal so that I can say yes to continuing to support and consider expanding on the efforts that are currently underway that are proven to be effective. I also want to be in a position to say yes to future proposals that have gone through a due diligence process that centers supportive data. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So I appreciate the two opposing opinions here. I'm going to go next, and I'm going to start by saying, thank you, Steve, for all the work that you're doing. I know that you're working really hard to serve this community, and it's really gratifying to see crime rates actually going down so far.
Thank you.
I'm also glad that our community court is up and running. As Councilmember Hamilton said, we had our first graduate today, so it'll be exciting to see the progress with that. I think we all want what's best for our community and for the perpetrators of crimes, actually. And even though crime has gone down, I think that 1,965 third-degree thefts is still a lot. And it costs the community a lot in many ways, psychologically and monetarily. And it costs the city that. So I actually, on the advice of a good friend, called the Marysville mayor and talked to him today. And he actually had data for me, and I don't know if it met the criteria of what you were looking for. But what he told me is that they had seen a 10 to 20% decrease in repeat offenders since they implemented their mandatory minimum program in 2023. And and then property crime has gone down almost 28%, and crimes against society have gone down over 20%. So, you can't necessarily say why, but that's good for them. So he also made the point that they found that most of the people who commit these crimes have in tandem a substance abuse problem. And so their program, if you have the minimum sentence, you have to take substance abuse treatment if that's part of your issue. And so, you think about somebody who has a substance abuse addiction going into jail for 38 days without any treatment. That's pretty cruel, actually. And so to mandate treatment for people, and then they say if they get through it, successfully, they actually cut their sentence short. So if you get done in 20 days, you can be done with your jail time. So I would like to have you give me advice on how we might include that into this proposal.
So I've read both statutes, and with the Marysville statute, the way it's structured is it directs the judge to impose at least 30 days. And then there's another provision that indicates that if the defendant's willing to do inpatient treatment, so go to a residential facility, then the judge is allowed to convert the 30 days to that inpatient facility. And then, as I understand it, if the provider says that they've then completed the necessary treatment, then that can be equivalent to having completed the jail term.
Okay. So can we include that in our legislation?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not done yet, but I'm interested in adding that. So here's where my questions come in. Can also in talking to people, emphasis patrols are really effective, but they're super expensive and hard to deal with this sudden influx of crime that you have to process, the criminals and everything. So I think the mayor was saying it's actually a lot easier to do 6 a week instead of 40 over one weekend or something.
I know that for the police, that can be the case, although I know for at least the DUI emphasis patrols, agencies will come in and help, and they help each other. And so we will, on a weekend like that, and when we come in on Monday, we'll have reports written by Redmond officers and Seattle officers. And I know
That's
Bellevue
cool.
does that for other cities.
Yeah.
I've been here almost 10 years, and my team knows usually when that's going, and we're ready for it. We have always been able to meet the need when there's a sudden spike in referrals.
Yeah, well, obviously you've done a good job. Thank you. Okay, so question time. So that's the substance abuse. Also, can we have mental health treatment available to people while they're either in jail or in treatment for substance abuse?
So, yes. I should back up and say, in order for the judge to, well, there's mandated treatment and then there's available treatment. And sometimes people have to choose it themselves.
Yep.
If the judge can't always order it, but the judge can order an evaluation for substance abuse and mental health, and then to follow any recommended treatment. That is usually a condition of probation, regardless of what the jail time is. And most treatment is what we call outpatient. They're not in a residential facility, but they go and meet with people once.
So I worded this very carefully because I didn't want to address mandatory treatment. I
Okay.
wanted to address having mental health
Is it
services available.
The SCORE jail does include psychological professionals who can help people who've got mental health issues while they're there.
Okay.
And when they get out, our probation department can help them find continued treatment to help them as well.
Okay. And then here's kind of a dumb question, but what the heck. Just to clarify, if somebody should have more jail time than 30 days, this would not limit them to 30 days.
It would not limit them to, and
Okay.
we've written it specifically that it changes the range from 0 to 364 to 30 to 364.
Oh, gotcha.
And the judge would still have discretion, and we would have the ability to ask for more.
Okay, thank you. That answers my questions. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think before I start, I just want to thank my colleagues for being so articulate, expressing what they believe is in the best for our city. So honored to be part of this amazing group. Thank you to Rizna and Steve for amazing job going back and work on this another 6 months and coming with some recommendation. It is a complex issue, and I read the code language, very well written and much better from the first one. I think there has been lots of improvement. Thank you for all of your fiscal analysis and also bringing the connection to the new community court. I think, again, the very difficult balance. On one hand, we have businesses and community members impacted by repeat theft. And on the other hand, we need to be fair and always look at the long-term outcomes. really appreciate Councilmember Neuenhaus for bringing this topic forward, and many community members who called me and emailed me. Sunday night, I cleaned up my inbox to 5 emails unread, and by Monday night was 148. Majority of them about this topic, and majority of them supporting this topic. Repeat organized theft undermines our community trust, harm retailers and customers, reduce sales tax revenues, and increase policing and court burdens. And I think your input is going to help us to come up with a very good approach, hopefully after tonight. I have 2 or 3 questions. One goes back to Mayor's question from you. So if we have one person who is a repeat offender, theft, and this person is not eligible to go to the community court because they have violent felony, but so they go to 30 days jail based on this, but they are also suffering from addiction or mental health or other root causes for this. What are we doing about that? Sending him to jail, 30 days, punishment, enforcement, great, but how are we addressing the root cause that make this case a case?
So after any jail term, whether it's these 30 days or something else on a different case, on a case like this where there's indication that there's a mental health issue or a substance abuse issue, the defendant will be put on probation for 2 years. The remaining jail time that could have been imposed, so say 334 days, is hanging over their head as a incentive, and then they're ordered to get a substance abuse evaluation and or a mental health evaluation from a certified provider in the state of Washington. Our city probation department then monitors to make sure that they do that. When they get it, not only do they have to do the evaluation, but the judge will order that they comply with whatever the treatment recommendations are. And if they don't comply, or if they don't get the evaluation in the first place, then the judge can put them in jail for additional time and then order them to do it again. And so that's kind of the general system that we do to, I suppose, in some way force people into treatment that it appears that they need, that they haven't up to date successfully completed. So.
Thank you. Thank you, that's helpful. Then one follow-up from one of the questions that Councilmember Hamilton asked. If we have 100K and we don't go with this ordinance, what is our best other options to decrease the number of that 10% of 700 repeat offender, to bring that down?
So that money would be in the police department, not my office. This would be, I guess, my opinion based on anecdotal evidence, but I would think increased patrols, increased presence. We've got the holiday season coming up, using that money to put more officers in the retail areas so that people who might come to the city looking to steal items here see the police presence and decide that this isn't the right place or right time to do that. That would probably be my suggestion. I don't know if the police would agree with me, but that's my suggestion.
Thank you. No, that's great. And I think this is my last question. I think the pros to me of this ordinance is very clear. The strength is we are messaging. I think you have a slide 8. Can you bring that to slide 8? Mm-hmm. I think the proposal that, I think message that Bellevue does not tolerate repeat offenders. And I think investing 100K for a year in that, to me, is not that much of money that we can just maybe spend on campaigning on something. So I think that justify that Bellevue is sending a message and Bellevue is serious about addressing organized retail theft. And I think Councilmember Hamilton said there is no data, but I believe this level of visibility could make some of these organized groups rethink targeting our city. And maybe that is the pros that I am seeing. But the concerns is, and I wanted to ask you, again, in the professional opinion and subject matter expert that you are, what is the cons that you can talk to us right now and say, that's what you see as a cons of this ordinance?
So I think what I would say about that is the nature of this is to take some discretion away, right? It's to take some discretion, not all, but some discretion away from the judges and by extension to my office on how to handle some cases. It's a legislative direction that for this particular situation, this should be what you do. And so in that sense, it would take some discretion away from me to deal with someone who has, say, 2 priors, but isn't, maybe isn't eligible for community court, but for some other reason, it doesn't seem like 30 days jail is the right solution either. I'd say that would be the con. It would take that discretion away. But I do work within a system where I don't have complete discretion. I can't ask for 2 years in jail on these cases. I'm not allowed to. But I would say that would be the main con, is that it limits some of the flexibility that my office has and that the judges have.
Thank you for that response. Just one follow-up about your response is, removing this discretion from you, can you, for example, distinguish between someone tied to organized crime, that everyone, they believe that they should see some punishment, and someone stealing because of desperation, because of hunger, because of something that I'm sure if it happens to me at that level of hunger, I probably do the crime too. Can you, removing this discretion out of your office, does that impact you distinguish between these 2 persons?
So I think there's 2 parts to your question. Am I able factually to determine whether or not a particular defendant falls into either of those 2 categories or other similar categories? And I think generally we're able to tell. We can tell by the nature of the victim, the nature of the merchandise that was stolen. Is it highly sought after? Is it easily resellable? Or is it diapers and baby food? So I do think that my office, through our experience, is generally able to do that. If I had someone who was more in the desperate situation, who couldn't qualify for community court, it would be difficult for me to create a situation where they didn't serve the 30 days jail. Part of the difficulty of that, though, would be that I have an obligation to enforce the law, and if this ordinance is passed, that's the law. And so I shouldn't professionally go in and try to avoid this, and so that would be a concern. But if it was something where I felt the just result was to try to come up with some way to have this person get the services that they need so that they don't reoffend and don't re-victimize people in the city of Bellevue, and do it without having this ordinance apply, then I think that I would be able to come up with a way of doing that.
Okay.
What about this bullet point that says you can use other available tools that may be more effective as in a diversion program? It seems like you still have
We do.
that discretion.
We have, yes, and so I think I'd be able to. We can do diversions that are not community court. I currently, as a policy, don't offer those to people with multiple priors. I think it's a first offense type of situation. You made a mistake, show us that you won't do it again. I would want to be careful in my job that I didn't overly expand that in order to avoid this ordinance, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
But if there was someone where I felt the just result was, I would always try to get to the just result. That's a big part of my job.
And we all appreciate you for that. Just to clarify, I was talking to someone that is a repeat offender from hunger or diapers, and they are not qualified for any diversion program that we have because of the last 2 years they did some felony or violence activity, again, due to this desperation. Last question, out of that 70 people that we had that repeat, they are 3 offenders, 10%, do you know by any chance how many of them belong to organized crime, and how many of them are just doing that because of the poverty or some other desperate measure that they are going through?
That can be harder to tell. I mean, you can usually see, based on the nature and the amount, whether it's organized or not. One way that I'm able to tell is that if it's truly organized crime, it becomes a felony, and the police department will actually send it to the county for them to do organized retail theft is a felony. So the more organized it gets, the more likely it is I won't see it. So there's some of that. But, you know, if someone's stealing $800 sunglasses, you know, from the sunglass line, that's not a crime of necessity, right? And you can tell that. There are certain things that have higher retail value that people can traffic in, and you can kind of tell that. You can look at a person's criminal history and see if there's a lot of theft or if there was a sudden event that's led to kind of a spurt of criminal activity. A lot of times people talk to the police and say exactly what they're doing. Surprisingly, most people confess to everything, and so we get information from them as well. A lot of times it's the store personnel who tell us. They'll say, hey, they'll call, he's back. We've seen him before. He stole from us 3 times and he's here. Please get here. And our police do a great job. They catch people in the store while they're doing it. And so things like that, they're different case by case, but we can see that kind of stuff.
Thank you so much for all of your response, and thank you for helping our city to be a safer city. Mayor, I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sumaduria.
Thank you. You know, as a small business owner in Bellevue, I think this is a really tough one. I think that I first seen how repeat offend really affects not just our bottom line, but also the safety and trust in our community, especially to the staff. As you know, small business owners, we have to deal a lot, not just staff, sometimes threat, many things, right, in life. So I think that having a barrier to protect them would be help everyone to thrive, especially in that environment. But I do believe in accountability, where if we did something wrong, we should be held accountable. I tell that to 3 of my children all the time. You know, there's timeouts, there's things we can do, but also I really a true believer in compassion. Because I think that, the deputy mayor said, not everyone's situation is exactly the same. And because I think that we need a solution that really protects our community, but also do give people a chance to build a life and rebuild their life when they have opportunity with our support. I think this is, I believe that, we really cannot afford to ignore the impacts of these crimes. But also we can't afford to kind of lose sight of justice. So some question I want to ask is about, the fairness and also the effectiveness. I think I'm just really curious how it is. So Councilmember Hamilton was asking you whether this is going to be helpful with the process. You said yes. Did you say yes? It's going to be helpful, effective of your work? Oh, I misheard, sorry.
I think I avoided answering yes or no to the question. It's
Sorry. Okay. All right. I guess, let me rephrase this.
Okay.
How do you see this going to make your work more effective?
So I think probably, to back up, I can already ask for 30 days jail on appropriate cases, and I try to do that. This is, I think, some information for me as a prosecutor as to what the community thinks is an appropriate sentence, maybe a little more than I've been doing apparently. I think one of the benefits that is kind of outside of my expertise is whether this will encourage people to not come to Bellevue. And that isn't something that I'll see, because I only see a case after it's been charged, right? So by definition, that person made a decision to come here. So in terms of how it might help, hopefully there'll be less people doing it. And one thing that we've talked about is let's say there's someone who comes under this ordinance, but they do qualify for a community court. And so they get to go over there, and they're told that they need to do certain things, housing and employment and substance abuse and mental health. They will know that if they fail in doing that their punishment will be at least 30 days. And that may be an increased motivation to help some people get through. So that would be a way that it could help.
Thank you. So this is thank you, by the way, that's helpful. And then, I think I want to explore more in understanding the balance and implementation. So in case the mandatory sentencing is applied, and then will the judge retain any discretion in the cases that he or she or they don't believe that's the case?
No. not below 30 days. The point of it being mandatory is it binds the judges as well. And so you could have a situation where a judge would say, I think that the appropriate sentence here is less, but I'm not allowed to impose it. And if they did impose it, we could appeal. And so they could complain, but they would have to impose 30 days.
Okay, perfect. And then my last question would be, because I think a lot of criticism we see from our justice system is the bias, right, add to certain characteristic of who we are. What are the safeguards we are going to be in place to prevent disproportionate impact on the most vulnerable group?
That's a really, really big question.
Sorry.
No, it's something that we talk about all the time in my profession, and we try to, you want to treat everybody fairly and equally under the law, but also not everybody comes into the courtroom from the same background. Not everybody will have the same results when they leave the courtroom. And those are things that we try to take into consideration. I guess the procedural safeguard is that my office would retain some discretion about how to charge diversion programs. There's a defense attorney who will advocate for their client to bring up issues that we might not others see. There's professionals in the probation department and in treatment agencies who can give opinions in advance. They don't have to wait to be sentenced to get their evaluation. A lot of times defense attorneys will send their clients out to get the evaluation to come back and say, hey, the reason this happened is here's this mental health thing that you can't see from the police report, but this doctor did see. So we should talk about that and see if there are other ways we can craft a remedy that holds the person responsible, but also addresses underlying issues to help them not reoffend. And then we have judges, and we have really good judges in Bellevue, we really do. And they care about doing the right thing, and they can stop us in the middle of stuff if they really think that it's the wrong way and ask us to stop and reconsider and go talk some more. So we have all of that in place. And then I think one of the things that's important is everybody who does this work does it because we care about it and we want to do a good job. And that, I think, that comes into all the conversations of what we try to do. So hopefully we can avoid impacting people improperly.
Like you said, I believe everyone in this room really cares about city. That's why we are here, and all the message we receive because they're really passionate about Carrot. Since I believe that we are a leader in this region as in policy making. Is there any way that for our city, if we're going to implement it, we can have some kind of data to show that how effective would it be?
Yeah, I think we would definitely. So one of the big things we have is our probation department, and it's not. Most cities don't have their own probation department, and it's really a good team. It's run really well, and they do keep stats. And I think Councilmember mentioned only 3% of people who work through probation reoffend in Bellevue. They would be monitoring all of this and would be able to keep those statistics to see recidivism rates in Bellevue, success rates on treatment, all that stuff. So yeah, we absolutely can keep track of this. And I think the way that what we would want to look at isn't necessarily a reduction overall in crime or even a reduction in theft in crime, but what's the reduction of people doing it a second time or a third time? And if this is successful, the more successful it is, the less we'll have to use it because people won't commit the third time, hopefully.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's all my questions.
Councilmember Bargava.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Actually, I want to start by reiterating some of what my colleagues have said. Thank you for really doing great work so far to help reduce the crime rates and keep Bellevue safe, but also in really creating a thoughtful ordinance for us to review and think about. I think it was really spectacularly done, so great job. Thanks. I also want to appreciate Councilmember Neonas for bringing this forward. I think this is a really it's brought us to a place to have this discussion, and I really appreciate that. I also appreciate actually Councilmember Hamilton for laying out an alternative view so that the discussion we've had, and I have the benefit of going later in this process, and my discussion so far has been really, really enlightening and helpful to sort of think about the mental model and approach with more clarity. So with that sort of said, I think we've seen a 28% reduction in the overall crime rate year on year, as was in the report last week. But theft and shoplifting still remain a challenge. We heard highest reported crime that does need to be addressed. I do appreciate that this ordinance attempts to bring focus to repeat offenders, particularly for active repeat offending, which is what you're trying to do with the way you've crafted this, and aims to target, specific theft and shoplifting crimes. So keeping that narrow, both of those I think are really, which is what I appreciated in the way you've crafted this and put this together. That said, I think it is equally important in parallel for us to evaluate what we're putting in place as appropriate mechanisms for people to prevent people to get to the third strike here. I think that is really, really important. In my opinion, what we do at strike 1 and strike 2 for repeat offenders has to be part of the solution to something that we do at strike 3. This ordinance could have a disproportionate effect on people with mental health, substance abuse, or just struggling with poverty and issues like that. And so for those reasons, it's really important to try and get earlier in this stage of thinking about what we do. It's a little bit aligned with what I think Mayor Robinson was saying, is where my head is at on that. We need to make sure that we're providing the appropriate supportive mechanisms, counseling, mental health support, substance abuse, even vocational training potentially. And community court can play a role in that process as well, but at the first 2 strikes, because we really don't want people, this 10% number should be smaller and smaller and hopefully 0, so that this doesn't ever come into play. And I would really like to see what we're trying to do up front when we see that happen. When we see somebody shoplifting, we find that person, they are put in touch with authorities, and we find mental health issues or substance abuse issues. We got to take action then, not wait for them to go to jail for 30 days. I think that really needs to be part. I can't stress that enough from my point of view. I was also really surprised in the briefing to hear that Everett and Marysville have very limited data after 2 years of this ordinance being in place. To be honest, I was shocked. But I think I really appreciate the mayor reaching out to the mayor and getting some additional data points that do suggest there is some supportive evidence of a reduction in crime rates. It is also my belief, and I said this to you in the briefing when we had, when the data and anecdotes are not clear, and especially if they don't match, I think the anecdotes should really be considered very strongly, because it's really like, if we don't have good data, anecdotes are really, really important, and especially if they're not matching. Then in this case, we're getting anecdotes even from Marysville and Everett that they've seen reduction, as Councilmember Dionne laid out in his statement. I am supportive of actually directing staff to prepare the ordinance to test this approach. And I say test this approach, it is like sort of relatively untested, because we don't have great data on the actual efficacy. And this has come up in numerous parts of our discussion today. I do want to say there are a couple things that I want to really note that are important for us to consider as we start to test this out. Effectiveness has sort of been uncertain as a real deterrent for this, and we should really think about, and the reason I say that is active offenders could act without expecting high risk of being caught and may not be a deterrent. So that's something for us to keep in our consideration set. The other thing that's really important for me that's a little concerning is the one-size-fits-all approach of this. And even with the allowances that we have for conversion, for physical or mental health risk, as you've called out, many cases may not neatly fit into those criteria. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking of sort of the use case of, I talked about this in a briefing, a 20-year-old mother of 1 or 2 who's caught twice stealing diapers, and now is a 3rd time. What happens? And I don't think that is the intent of this ordinance. And I think, I would really encourage in that situation for the lawyers and the prosecutors to find plea-like situations, if there is no diversion possible, to try and, have the right outcome. Because the intent is to prevent organized crime, prevent people who are doing this fully conscious of this, but not to criminalize poverty, which I think is really, really important. I think there is another consideration, which is increased cost, which I think is well within limits for the legal and correction system. And I think as we lay this out, I think I would stress that we lay out some measures to evaluate success. In fact, some metrics that we should consider as we roll out this if we can get there. But I'll make a few suggestions on areas that I think are beyond just reductions in reported theft or rate of recidivism. I think those are obvious and we will surely track. But I think, and maybe community surveys for perceptions of safety, whether it's businesses or residents, I think that is also par for the course. And so is cost. But I would also recommend that we look at the demographic breakdown to understand where we're at. We also look at the breakdown of mental health and drug use for folks who go through this and see what we're finding towards the end of that process. I think if we don't track that, then we will not learn. And I surely don't want to be in the situation where we don't have good data 6 months, 8 months, 12 months from now on understanding the effectiveness. And also sort of the effectiveness of comparing this to other alternatives that we may have on the table, like people sentenced using mandatory minimum versus people who are second-time offenders. Is there a change in the rate of recidivism, for example, is another way to think about this. So those are sort of my suggestions on go forwards, some of the call outs on risk, and so at least how I'm thinking about this as a mental model to approach this and learn from it and make sure that we have a way to get Bellevue to be safer, deter crime. Like I think it was Deputy Mayor said, even the perception of a threat which could be more punitive can deter crime, and we should learn more about that. It shouldn't be just an opinion that we have. So those are great. The only question I have is I wanted to understand how you qualify substantial risk when you think about home monitoring. Like, what does substantial risk mean?
So it's a common term in criminal law. You'll see it throughout definitions of crimes and in this kind of a context. What it indicates to the judge, and the way we've written it is the defense attorney has to prove it. And if the judge is going to do that, they have to put in written findings, which forces the judge to be confident in that decision. I haven't seen this done very often, if ever. It's very rare because they would have to show not just that there could be some risk, but that the jail facility doesn't have an ability to take care of that. Anecdotally, we had a person arrested last week who had a very severe infection in their leg to the point where I was called because there was some concern they might have to amputate, and how do we deal with that? They were able to control it, and the SCORE jail facility said we can help him and take care of him while he's here. And
in the prison?
In the prison. They basically have their own miniature hospital. So someone would have to show that whatever's going on with their defendant is over and above anything that the jail could provide, and that would be very difficult to show.
Someone who's facing a possible amputation of a leg, I mean, it's a fair assumption to make that the home monitoring is going to be very, very unlikely to come into play.
I think it's hard for me to imagine a circumstance that would be so bad that the jail time wouldn't be imposed, because the jail itself is designed to take care of people who are in bad situations, both physically and mentally.
Mentally, physical and mental.
That's a lot of who they deal with. A lot of the people who they serve, is a way of thinking of it, are people who are not in the best physical health or the best mental health, and they're already equipped to do that. So they would have to show to the judge not just that there's a risk, but that it's a substantial risk. That it's, and what does that mean? That's what lawyers get paid for, I guess. I was just trying to define terms, but I think it's unlikely that there would be very many people who would qualify for that. But I think the important part of that provision is to make sure that the judge understands that if that is met, you don't waive the jail time. It doesn't go to zero. What it is we're going to convert it to a different type of detention. And it tells the judge that there's still going to be 30 days. We're just going to have to serve it a different way for a very small percentage of the population.
Got it. So the only thing I'll say in closing is, in addition to what the mayor said about, mental health support, I would say, accelerating that possibility at strike one and strike two, where it's appropriate, whether it's substance abuse, mental health support, or other ways to provide economic support to people who really need it, through programs we may have across the city, I think are really important, and the community court plays a part there. But I think those are things that I would really push for to reduce this 10% number down. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lee, thank you for your patience.
Okay, thanks. Well, thanks for the presentation with some real good insight. I have worked with Chief Shirley for quite a few years, ever since that we first noticed that in Victoria Mall, many stores are reporting their goods being stolen. It's not even stolen, it's just taken away, blatantly. And people who shop there notice that, and nobody seems to dare to do anything. So it's really a scary situation. On the other hand, we all know that Bellevue Police Department is doing a great job. So we have to compliment them. They're doing the best they can. We fund them. We do everything possible. But we also heard from the store owners, today. They come out and tell us, not last year, not 6 months ago, but right now. Because I believe that the stores are not reporting them. The statistics are not showing. Because they figure, what for? We couldn't do anything about it. That's the problem. So this ordinance introduced to do something, because any possible victim, the store owners are, and the whole city is, and even more dangerously, these these criminals can become violent. And that's why I believe that store owners tell their workers, don't risk your life. It's not worth it, right? And also I know police can't really do much because of even capture them, they're going to come back, repeat. But even if they do get the alert, they come, and by the time they get there, the guy is already out of the store, and you cannot do anything about it unless you catch them red-handed. So we tried, police have police station right there, but you cannot have police station there 24 hours a day. Even if that's the case, if you're one step too slow, they're out of the store, not much you can do. So I think we got to do more, that's the key. And this is the ordinance, Councilmember Gerald is introducing, is 1-2, 1-2. Because I believe one victim is too many. I don't care what the statistics say. We want to discourage it. And the tool what we're using is to discourage it. And, also you mentioned, even though with the ordinance, we still have given the judicial discretion, right? There's still discretion. You mentioned a number of things that we still can do, we still will be doing. So there are other measures to combat, crime and criminals. They'll still continue. So we're not losing them. So I think it's important, we heard over and over, we heard from Deputy Mayor, it's a message, very important message, that we are holding criminals accountable. And we have to hold everybody accountable, especially criminals, because they impact other people negatively. So I appreciate even your perspective, Steve, that there's value to stop repeat offenders, right? So I have a question for you. Doesn't repeat offenders, if there are less repeat offenders, does it mean that there will be less criminals, less crimes? I would think it's logical.
Yeah, logically, right.
Okay,
If they
okay.
don't commit a third theft, then
we don't have
there's-
stats, but we have very important, experienced opinion and observation. So because of all that, I believe that it is something we definitely can use. For what? For $125,000? We're talking about. So I think it's worthwhile because the store owners are losing more than that, probably in one day. So why can't we do this? I'm sure if you ask store owners, all of them be happy to give us $125,000 to cover that jail cost. So I believe this is a good law. Number one, it gives us a tool to discourage criminals, specifically, you already said, most likely, for sure, repeat offenders. But more importantly, we discourage other offenders, other crimes. And other people who are committing the crime, they will be, well, getting the message. Let's not do it. I think it accomplishes its purpose, and Bellevue Police Department is great. They will be doing all the other things that we all want to see done together. So this addition tools is what I would support. So I support the ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. Good discussion. Really appreciate the thoughtfulness of the comments. And I appreciate you both with your answering and working with us on this. So I'm going to ask Councilmember Neuenhuis to make a motion. And if we haven't hit on it as you thought it should be, we can amend it. So let's try this.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. I move to direct staff to prepare an ordinance imposing.
Let's slow down so we can think about it as you say it. Thank you.
I move to direct staff to prepare an ordinance imposing mandatory minimum sentencing for repeat offenders of certain theft crimes and to include substance abuse treatment option similar to Marysville's ordinance with a 12-month report check back to council.
Second.
Is that good direction for you?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. Any comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Oh, sorry. Hold on, take it back.
I wanted to say that beyond substance abuse, I think mental health should be part of that, like behavioral issues, mental health conditions are just as important.
Yeah, I forgot to put that in. Can we make that
Is
understood?
that necessary qualification or would that fall under?
I think you can put both of those in there, and that will direct us to be able to do our best to include both.
Okay,
Okay.
Councilmember Bargava, you have amended it to include mental health.
Mayor, can I ask you a question?
Just a minute, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, you can't second
I
your own
can
motion.
second, yeah.
Second,
Go ahead.
what is that term 12 months checkpoint means?
Mean to check back in with the council after the ordinance has been in effect over a year.
And assume they checked back and hopefully it is effective and it reduced that 10% to 5%, that's the goal. But what is the council role would be if we don't see any improvement and we see maybe actually opposite maybe? So what is that checkpoints and what is the council responsibility at that checkpoints time?
Well, I think that would be up to us as a council to take any direction or action that we would deem necessary based on the reports that came back after that 1 year time.
So I just wanted to make sure that when it comes back, we have the discretion to again discuss that as a study session like this and then.
As we would with any ordinance, wouldn't we? Yeah.
So the ordinance,
Well, this would just be a report back.
yes, it
Right.
would be a report back, assuming that we are going to be preparing the ordinance for you to take action. And if you do take action, that ordinance will be in effect.
Right.
The 1 year check back, at least how I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, would be just to report back to council as to how things are going in terms of rates, recidivism, any other information that we can provide to council. Obviously, if council decides to do something else at that point based on that report, then that would be a new item because the ordinance that we're talking about here would already be in effect.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could, at that time, suggest at a next meeting to address the concerns we had.
So to just make me understand, the checkpoint is just a report back.
Yes.
What happened in that 12 months? But then we need a council vote if we wanted to discuss this ordinance.
You would
and
need
change.
a whole item on the agenda to do that. And we could suggest that at that time if we wanted to.
That's,
And you would have to vote to have it put on the agenda.
that's the clarification I was looking for. Thank you so much.
Okay. So we have an amended motion that's been seconded. And I think we can vote as a whole. Is that okay, Charmaine, or shall we vote on the amendment?
You'll have to vote on the
Okay,
amendment.
let's vote on Councilmember Bargava's amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and with that, all in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed?
No.
Okay. So it passes 6-1. All right, thank you very much. We're going to adjourn. Our next meeting is not until October 7th, 2025, so we will see you then. Thank you.